Welcome back to Witchy Writerly Wednesdays. We are going back and forth, so this week is here, and next week prepare for Haley's channel. So we are here with Haley Writes from Haley Writes' channel, and we are going to be writing for 1 hour in a little bit. But first, we want to do introductions. Do you guys have any goals for today, as well as talk a little bit about our topic today, which is good villains. But before we start that, let's go ahead and go over what our goals are for today. So, Haley, do you want to go ahead and start off and let us know what you would like to get accomplished today?
Perfect. Yes. So today I think I'm going to be looking at revising a short story that I had been working on for a while. It's actually going to be showcased in Corey's AuthorTube conference, a Gallery of Sun and Bones. So I'm beginning draft 6 for it. So it's been going on for a couple of years now. I think I wrote the first draft in 2020 for part of my English capstone. So I'm excited about it though, and like rereading it and getting some of it prepared for talking about revision with the conference coming up made me kind of inspired to try to revise it again because I felt like it wasn't done yet. So I'm just gonna kind of read through it a little bit and go see what else I can improve upon it.
Awesome. So today I'm just continuing to truck on my revision work. I'm working on draft 2 of Project Clockwork. I really don't know what the name's going to be. The Clockwork has nothing to do with the book at this point. It's not even remotely close to what it used to be. So, but it's just what it is. But yeah, I believe I am still in chapter 13. I need to check my wrong journal. Anyway, I'll check it in a minute, but I think I'm either on the end of chapter 13 or beginning of chapter 14. So I'm getting there. I'm getting there. So I'm just going to be working on that today. And Brandon is here. Hi. Love the topic of villains, by the way. I've even considered writing an alternate version of my story where the villain is the protagonist instead, just to make sure it's believable, a hero of their own story. Honestly, if you are having a hard time connecting to your villain, one of the best things you can do is just for you, not even something you would publish, but just for you, just create like a little story. It doesn't have to be a short story. You can like write as long as you need to, like pretending like you have to write a book from the perspective of the villain just to make sure you understand them. Because chances are, if it feels off somewhere, it is off. If you have that gut feeling, it probably is true. So, oh hi, it's a doggy.
Tulip decided to write today.
Aww.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I love that idea so much. I've done that a couple of times as like not like a full length thing or anything like that, but just a couple paragraphs here and there where I'm like trying to figure out what their intentions are. Because going into our topic for today, I do think one of my favorite type of villain is that gray area villain where you can kind of like see where they're coming from and also like the hero of their own story, because a superhero who goes all by themselves and stuff could easily become a villain based on their intentions and what they want out of their life or their story, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing you can do is if you have a hard time, like you disconnect randomly throughout the story, is you can, as you have your story pulled up, you can pull up a side window and have that open. And anytime your main character is interacting with a villain and it feels off, you can go to that other side window you have and start typing out villain's perspective of that exact scene that you're doing. So you've got the scenes right next to each other, and one of them is your real story and the other one's from the villain's perspective. Again, it will just help you see immediately what's going on, probably. Because again, chances are something's probably not lining up. And it is okay for your villain to occasionally agree with their hero, especially when you have a good villain. So if you have a villain who does not believe themselves to be a villain, they believe themselves to be a hero, there might be circumstances in which they even aid your protagonist. It really will depend on the circumstance. I think I think sometimes because we're used to things being so stark and so extreme, we think they're always going to be at odds. That's not necessarily true. And some of the villain stories that hurt the most are the ones in which occasionally they're allies. That
Mm.
hurts. I don't know about anybody else, but like a villain
Oh,
who
no.
still goes
Yeah.
back to villainy after at times aiding the hero, that hurts worse. Because it's like you were so close to being a good guy. You were right on that knife's edge and you still fell on the wrong side. That's really
Yeah.
painful. So if you really want to twist the knife in your reader's gut, that's one way to do it. It's also one way to get a lot of haters, though, because you might get a lot
Mm.
of people who really hate that you did that.
Yeah.
So just FYI, but
I
if you're chill with that.
I also really like the surprise twist too when we have a secondary character who's kind of like a side character or a character's best friend, and then they end up turning and stabbing him in the back, and then they become the villain. I think that's another way to really hurt the reader.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, again, if you want to make that believable, because I've seen that done a couple times really badly, and it's
Mm.
really hard to
Yeah,
read.
that is a tricky one for sure. Mm-hmm.
But if you do that trick where you have a side story open, and every time that side character is there, you're having to write that side character's perspective, I think that might help. Because turning against someone isn't something that comes immediately. It's something that slowly over time, especially if they're friends. If they've been friends a long time, what probably started happening is resentment or
Mm-hmm.
bitterness or not really agreeing with that person, but not voicing that you don't completely agree. And having that
Yeah.
sidebar open and constantly switching to the other perspective, just so you can make sure you know, so that the conversation that is clear to the reader in your story, you can make sure that the diction is correct. Like it might seem okay on the surface
Mm-hmm.
if you're like going through it very quickly, but if you were
Yeah.
paying close attention, is the diction a little off? Is the tone of that character a little off, to where if you were looking for it, you'd be like, something's not right about their relationship. Like it's a
Right.
little off.
Like if you're gonna do it, you have to make sure that you hint at it throughout the story, or else it's not going to come across. It's just gonna be like, oh, you just threw that in there. That came out of
Right. It was
nowhere.
just thrown in there
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure.
No, definitely needs some hints.
For sure.
Because readers love to guess too. So your
Yeah.
hints can be super subtle, or as it's getting closer, it can get like a little bit more like hinty, because a reader will feel more satisfied when it actually happens if you hint at it
Yeah.
beforehand. I always struggled with that a little bit because I'm like, I know you want to guess, but like, don't guess. I want to surprise you.
Right. Yeah. It's
So,
kind of it's a hard one. And sometimes I think of being too obvious. What some people don't understand
mhm,
is obvious can be good or bad depending on what you're doing. It kind of depends
right.
on what it is. But sometimes, like you said, obvious is kind of good in some ways, because you have to think in terms of, depending on how your story's set up, it can be obvious to the audience so long as it's not obvious to the characters that are experiencing it.
Mm,
So like the disintegration of a relationship, for example, should be pretty easy to see from an outsider's perspective, because I don't know about you, but I see my friends go through like breakups all the time, and I saw the breakup like 2 years
mhm,
ago. I was like, oh yeah, I see this coming.
right. No,
But
I've been
I'm an
there too.
outsider. So of course I see that from an outsider's perspective. But someone
Mhm,
in the relationship, it's small things over a long period of time. And also they usually love each other. So they're not willing to see some of the warning flags, where someone outside who's not blinded by that could see it pretty easily. So long as your characters, because that's what's frustrating about a badly done version, is you're thinking, why
mhm,
didn't the character figure this out? It's so obvious, so
yeah,
you have to make sure the character couldn't have figured it out, that it
mhm,
is a shock to the character. Maybe not complete shock, maybe they did have a feeling something was off, but not to the extent that they figured it out completely. But the audience can.
yeah.
Brandon, my hero and villain will agree on a lot of things. They're actually good friends. That's eventually what causes his downfall. The only people capable of dealing with him are people he loves.
Mm,
Yep. Um, it's one of those things that it's sometimes hard to write some of this stuff because I don't know about you, but I kind of always had the feeling of like, I never liked the idea that I could support someone who does horrible things. But the
Right.
reality is, if we really think about the people we love, chances are we would support them a little further than we like to think we would before we would
Mhm.
eventually step back.
Oh, yeah,
I think for a lot of
definitely.
people. And it can be intimidating to write that, especially when you want your hero character to truly be a hero and not make mistakes. You don't want it to seem as if they've allied themselves with something that's bad. But the reality is, if you love someone, chances are you're going to excuse quite a bit of bad behavior before it gets severe enough for you to wake up.
Mhm.
Um, I've had friends that, again, they've dated guys that are straight up white supremacists, and
Oof.
some of the stuff that was said, which wasn't super obvious at first, like they'd say some stuff that like I was catching because I was like, that's a little sus, and I know
Right.
that language, that's the pipeline. But then like it would start small and it just progressively got worse, and as they got deeper in the relationship, they started feeling like, oh well, I need to be the one that changes his mind, when it's like there is no changing minds.
Right.
These
At that
will
point,
always
like,
listen to themselves. So they're not going to
um,
hear you. They
oh,
really
that's
aren't.
awful.
They really aren't. I've been online since I was pretty young, and I've been doing chat room moderation since like the JavaScript days. So I
Mm.
know what the pipeline looks like, and you cannot talk people out of it. They have to decide to get out. It has to be their decision. So yeah, yeah, Brandon's like, oh no, yeah, it's
Yeah.
scary to see. It's actually terrifying. One of
Mm.
them, to my knowledge, did not get out. She's still with him, and she's moved with him to some isolating state, which is an abusive relationship. And I don't know if she's even still alive. I have no
Um,
contact with her. She was never a super close friend of mine. She was closer to some of my other friends. She was kind of like a friend of a friend kind of thing.
right.
I hope the others know about her, but I don't think so. It sounds like she cut everyone off, which is usually what happens in these relationships. They
Yeah,
get a
no,
hold of somebody,
definitely.
they start brainwashing them, they move them to a state where they have no family, have no friends, and then they cut them off from everyone. I hope she gets out and I hope she wakes up. But that's the scariest kind of villain,
No,
is
definitely.
the
The one
kind
of
that gets close.
manipulation through love and ugh, yeah.
Yeah, it's
No, it's
scary.
awful.
It's scary how often it happens.
Mhm.
It really is. Brandon, they don't agree on the illegal stuff. The antagonist is, in a nutshell, enslaving spirits and forcing them to hurt people. My hero doesn't agree with that part. When I said they agree on a lot, I was. Oh, I think he's still typing.
Yes.
Referring to the first 4 books in which the antagonist is working alongside the heroes, pretending to help them. That's how they grew to love each other.
Mm. Dang, that's a long time to like put up your end game through 4
That
books.
is. That
That's
is.
going to
I
be a
can't.
huge
I can't
downfall then.
remember how long your series is, Brandon. Is your series going to be like is it 8 books? Is that like the halfway point? Like 4 books in is halfway? I'm kind of curious how long your series, because I can't remember. I'm pretty sure you told us at one point, but I can't
Yeah,
remember
I'm
for
sure
sure.
you
It might
told us
have
at one
been 10.
point.
It was maybe
Either
I
8 or
feel like
10.
it's
I
8 or
honestly
10,
I
but I
can't
could be
I can't remember either.
I could be totally wrong. But I feel like it was either 8 or 10, but I could be wrong. Oh,
8
yes,
books.
it was 8.
Okay.
Yes. So that is the halfway point. Well, that makes sense because halfway
Yeah.
point you're getting closer to like the darkness of the soul arc area.
Right.
I mean, not quite that. I think darkness is supposed to be the tail end of Act 2, I feel like. So that makes sense though. If it's first 4 books, so you're into book 5 is when this would happen. Yeah, that's about the right placement, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, that makes
makes
sense to
sense.
me. I couldn't imagine keeping track of all of that for such a long series. Like, kudos to you, Brandon. I
Oh
I don't know
yeah.
if I could ever. I mean, I don't know. At some point, maybe, but
You've
I
got
can't
to have
imagine me
the
doing
right
more than
organized
3.
brain for that.
Yeah, I don't think I do. I have a
I
hard
definitely
enough.
don't. Well, actually, the thing
Uh,
is, if push came to shove, and if it was my entire job and I didn't have other things going on, maybe. But it
mhm,
would have to be like, I feel like each book would have to be like a little shorter than books I do now.
mm,
Like, I don't
yeah.
think, because I think it would be a problem if each of the 8 books was as big as the current books I have. I think that would be impossible, pretty much.
Oh, definitely. Like, I think, with A Dance of Shadows, I mean, the world is so big, it has series potential, but, like, my first draft was nearing 150K, and I'm like, I couldn't keep that up for that. Plus, I need to cut more than that, at most 120, but I need to make it smaller, which is why I was thinking about replotting again, because it is just too damn big. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm like, things gotta go. I need to just start over at this point. But it's fine. That's an issue for another day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to come to those conclusions.
Yeah,
Um but yeah, this has been good. I think we need to start a sprint real soon. So I've got an hour-long sprint already right
perfect.
here. So, we are going to go ahead and get trucking here. So, I will see you guys real soon in about an hour. But please remember, if you guys want stuff to show up in streams, these streams to show up in like feeds and stuff like that, and to see more from us, please make sure you subscribe and like so we show up in algorithms. It really, really helps a lot. It helps a ton. So, thank you guys so much for those of you who already are. And if you've forgotten, please click those. It would be quite lovely. Oh, real quick, Brandon has some more stuff. Everyone thinks Donnie's a good guy for the first 4 books. Readers learn he's a bad guy for 5 and 6 and get to hate him while they watch the cast mourn his supposed death. The characters
Ooh,
don't learn he's behind everything until book 7.
damn.
Wow.
That is a slow burn, slow villain burn if I ever saw one.
Goodness.
That is amazing.
Holy. Wow. Yep, that'll do it. That'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and start. We will see you guys back soon.
Perfect. I'm gonna run quick and grab some dinner and then start myself.
Awesome, sounds good. All right, there we have it. There we go. Oh, wait. Oh, did I do it?
Yay.
There we go. All right. Sorry, I thought I was like unmuting you, but I think you have to unmute. So.
Oh, yeah. I think that's only if you're the one who did the muting in the first place. Yeah, I was just traveling back over here, you know.
Okay.
So I got it. Oh my gosh. How did you do, Corey?
I did pretty well. So I actually was in chapter 14 and I finished that. So I just started chapter 15 edits. So I started pulling those scenes over bit by bit. So I'm
That's
actually in scene 2 of chapter 15 already. So I actually did really well today.
Nice. That's great.
Yeah.
I got a decent chunk. I am almost like, I guess 2/3 of the first page revised. It's going pretty slow because I'm kind of going like paragraph by paragraph. I made the indents a lot bigger though, so it's technically on the second page, but 459 words is where that left me off on. So for a like 23-page story, we're chugging. But I'm doing more like concrete line edits for this draft. And trying to improve the style and flow of it. So it's going to take a lot longer than some of the previous drafts, but I'm okay with that. We have a slightly different beginning now with this edit. So I was like, cool, I think this serves it better. So
nice.
That's always good.
Awesome. How did you guys do in that sprint? I hope you guys did well. Let us know what your I'll go ahead and change the banner. Please let us know how it went for y'all's. And we can return to topic a little bit, talk a little bit more before I have to go. But some other aspects of like good villains. So I put quotation marks for a reason because there are lots of different ways you can interpret it. But we were talking more good in terms of like believability, like them believing themselves to be good. But I'm kind of curious what everyone's opinions are on justifications for what villains do that are given in books. For me, I find, generally speaking, that if there are a lot of like generalizations made about villains that kind of excuse their villainous behavior after the fact, I usually really hate that. Actually, like a good example would be, let's say a villain goes on a rampage and like mass murders a whole group of people, like a whole city or something, like just murders people in cold blood. And then after the fact, he ends up dying in like a martyr kind of way for another cause. And then a story kind of comes out where a lot of characters were like, well, he did everything for the greater good kind of thing. And he was doing all of this. And it's kind of painted like he was really a good guy and he just did the bad things to get to the good end. I don't know about you, but I hate that kind of stuff. It's very means kind of mentality. And I hate it when books
I don't. Yeah, I don't prefer that one either because I feel like then you're just trying to wrap everything up in a nice, like, neat little bow for the villain character. And even if the villain character, I guess it can go like two ways for me, I think. If it's like the protagonist turns out to be the villain because think they're doing the right thing and then they end up destroying the world or whatever, ends justify the means, as you say. I could get behind that a little bit. Not really though. It depends on I like changed my mind as I was talking. I'm like, what am I going for? I don't remember as I started talking. Basically, it's just like, I don't know. It's just like weird because if they're going to be a protagonist, then they should be less morally ambiguous than an actual villain character. You know, like it might like cross their mind or something that could be an option to get to the same result. But if they're a protagonist, like they're not going to go that route. Yet a morally ambiguous, or a villain character who thinks they're the good guy by like setting their foot down and doing the deed that needs to be done and like murders a bunch of people, and then everyone's like cheering them on at the end, then they're not a villain character at that point. Then the
Everyone's
other
messed
characters,
up.
yeah, then like everyone is treating that person like they were the hero of the story, in which case they're not a villain, they're actually the protagonist, and then you need to write a completely different story.
Yes. Yeah. I would. Yeah, I think I've mentioned that because like I've seen it done usually in like shows and stuff like that, which makes me think that maybe the script writing was going too fast for them to step back and say, this is a little weird. Like,
Yeah.
we just excuse like pretty much Nazi behavior. Is that what we just did? Because essentially, like they would do that. And I was just like, I felt like the only audience member that was stepping back and being like, did they just excuse genocide? Like, is that what they just ended the show on? So like, when stuff like that happens, I'm like, ooh, that's rough. Yeah. So, Brandon, I never actually write during the Brandon.
What are you doing, Brandon?
Dude, you got a series. You gotta write, dude. You've got like an 8-book series you're working on, bro. Oh,
I gotta get going.
Oh, hello. Yeah, I didn't see you when you came in earlier, but welcome. I watched a random YouTube video play. Cats. I don't blame you. Cats are very, very cute. Yes. What's your excuse, Brandon? Did you have cats? You didn't have cats. What's your excuse? I gotta know.
I had my dogs come in here a couple of times and kind of whimper bark at me, but I was like, no, my parents are in the other room. Like, you can go bother them. Like, I'm not.
Yeah, you can get attention elsewhere.
I'm like, I'm attempting to eat and revise at the same time. Oh, which is also probably why it went slower. But
they wanted the food.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely.
I think in most cases they need a reason to be the way they are, but shouldn't be excused. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one thing to show the reasoning. It's a whole nother thing to excuse them. Very much hard agree on that one.
Yeah, because at that point you're like making a statement that it's okay to be that way as an author, and you don't necessarily want, I guess you have to be careful like what your narrative implies in a sense. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's a whole like artist versus the art thing, but I don't know. I think if I read that, then I'm kind of like,
because that's kind of the takeaway. And that's why, like, I think some people, when they hear me talk about like the message of the book, they think that it has to be some like, you know, and the moral of the story, kids, is this. And it's like, it's not necessarily a moral of the story, but it is a message you have chosen to close on as an author. And regardless of the whole separation of art from the artist kind of thing, and that whole discussion, which I'm kind of gray area on that one. Yeah. At the same time, like, if that's what you're constantly intentionally as an author leaving your audience with, I feel like you need to be held accountable to that to an extent. So, like, if your closing message for every book you write is nothing ever matters, the world is dark, evil will always win, I kind of feel like that's just how you see life, and that's how you just put in your work. That is you to an extent as an artist. Right. I feel like you can't completely separate the artist from the art. I think there's an extent where it's just like, this is the artist though. So when I see stories that end in justifying genocide, it's sus to me. Really sus.
No, I feel that same exact way, because I mean the separation can only go so far, especially when it comes to themes and messages that show up, especially at the ending of a book. So no, I completely agree with that.
All right, Brandon. So the villain is the hero of his own story, right? He's doing the same things that his villain is doing, fighting fire with fire. To an extent, maybe. Kind of depends on the story, but yeah. Natalie, hi y'all. Just saw the channel recommended. Well, welcome. Hello.
Hi. Welcome.
Yeah, we're actually finishing up. Our streams tend to be pretty short because they're in the middle of the week streams and we both work. So, but yeah, we're just having a little bit of discussion on villainy. Depends on the depends on the story. Some cases where the story has a theme about morals or the villain is redeemed, or if the MC is the villain, I guess the villain can have a good reason to do what they do. Yes.
Yeah.
And it kind of depends on how it's closing. So like what we were talking about, like if the general takeaway, like when people put down your book, when they're finished with your book and they walk away, what did they take away from your book? I think is the main thing. And it was the main problem I had with the recent book I just reviewed, which is The Stars We Steal by Alexa Dunn. My main problem was the takeaway of the book was kind of horrible. Like it was not a good takeaway for me personally. But even if you step back and even if like I didn't see that particular aspect, the takeaway was still, oh, the setup is there are a bunch of people starving to death on these ships. And the end of the book is we're on a beach drinking and don't care. Really, it ends like that.
That's crazy.
Nothing is really solved. It starts with starving people and ends with those people being completely ignored. So the takeaway of the book is rich people are horrible, and which is true. But like the takeaway is people who are supposedly good and heroes of a story will never save anyone. And everyone who's poor is bound to die anyway, and no one's going to save you. That was the takeaway of the book.
Oh God, I hate that so much.
It's so bad.
Oh, that's so bad.
I don't think that was Alexa's intention. I can almost guarantee you it was not her intention.
No, probably not.
I bet you if I sat her down in a room and asked her, she'd be like, that's not what I meant. I don't think she meant to do that. But when you close the book and walk away, that's all you have.
Well, and that's a hard thing about writing too, is because people can read it and have so many different interpretations versus like author intention versus what's actually there. But I mean, that's why you need to go through those extra like editing steps and readers and all of that. And I think like sometimes like she is traditionally published, so I know that there's been a downfall in that kind of development for traditionally published authors, is that they don't get that developmental editing anymore because like they're such on like that timeline thing, kind of trying to compete with self-publishing. And so I mean I think that's just like the trends that are happening now with the industry, is that a lot of those things, those implications are falling through the cracks a little bit. I mean, it happens with self-publishing too, if you're not seeing a developmental editor, but I think it's interesting that we're seeing that in both cases now.
Yeah.
Whereas
we're seeing it in both.
Yeah. Whereas before, traditionally published was held to a higher standard.
Yeah. Well, generally speaking, you still always had those smaller publishing houses that would still push out things that were like,
I mean, yeah, that's true.
Just go to a used bookstore. Like, really, if you want to see the scum of the published world, use bookstore, man. There are so many. I found stuff with Penguin House Publishing on it that I'm like, who okayed this? Who said this needed to be a book? Who got paid because they should not? Like,
oh man,
I don't want to wish ill on somebody, but some of this stuff is like, who said okay on this? Who was it? Who was it?
It's also,
for example, my antagonist works for the government. He's in a department that's researching how to weaponize modern magic. He doesn't like that, so he uses the very thing he created to overthrow the ones in charge of it. But he ends up hurting a lot of people along the way, including loved ones. That's what makes him a villain. Pretty much, ignoring the collateral damage for the sake of the whole. Which that is kind of a scary villain in a way, because it's very easy to see most people coming to those decisions, especially when it comes to really hard decisions where it's like there are no good decisions. Sometimes it's like, if I let them have my research, they will kill people with it. If I take my research back, some people might die because, maybe a government agent is like, oh, he'll just assume everyone in the office was complicit in that and kill everybody in the office. So like people would die regardless of what you do. So at that point, it's like, okay, how can I cause the least damage? Like at that point, you're choosing the lesser of two evils, but doesn't necessarily mean you're innocent either. It's a difficult story to tell. It kind of reminds me, I don't know if anyone here is familiar with Full Metal Alchemist, but one of the reasons that particular series was really good, it was written by a woman, first off, which is why it's one of the better action mangas that have come out of Shonen Jump ever. It was written by a woman. And second, she had family that were soldiers and had stress disorders and stuff like that. So the soldiers and the war that happens in that book is not only accurate, but also the consequences after the war is accurate. The soldiers that survived know they should die for their war crimes. They're very aware. They're like, nothing justifies what I did. And they know that. They will say that. They'll say, nothing justifies that I killed people. It doesn't matter that I was under orders. It doesn't matter who I was serving. It doesn't matter that my family was also in danger. That doesn't justify that I took others' lives. It was still a life. It doesn't matter who it was. I still killed people. And like, that's more accurate, because it's like, it's a sad situation, but no one wins in war. Everyone loses. And that's an important thing to, like, you know, showcase. There's no real solid good guy in a lot of these scenarios. I killed 100 people, but my childhood. Oh, I hate that one. I can't stand that one.
Oh God.
I can't stand it.
Yeah. Oh my God. I saw so many of these, especially when I was younger and I read more like YA books and stuff. Like that was like the reason for like everyone to do anything was my childhood sucked, so that made me the way that I am. And I feel like that's just such a cop out. I mean, there's so many, like, traumatic childhood can lead to some disorders and whatever, but like not all the time. And most people do not end up killing people, even though their childhood was rough. So
I know so many people are some of the nicest people in the world because they don't want what happened to them to happen to somebody else, because they did walk through the gates of hell and they came out the other side and they're like, I would never wish that on somebody else. So I'm going to make sure I'm not that. So it really depends. But yeah, it's an oversimplification of villainy for sure. Natalie, my story is a fun mess of the good guys having bad people among them and the bad guys having good people among them. And there's a whatever people too. Good mix.
Nice. Good to have variety.
I'm talking about work, keeping fingers crossed for me to finish all edits and stuff on this book before June. We have a couple days. And by a couple days, I mean, I think you guys have like, what?
A day.
One day? One day? One day?
Days.
You have one day?
No, yeah, one day. Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's the 30th.
Yeah, it's it for me. I'm on the last day of the month right now. It's the 30th over here in Japan. So if I'm saying it's already there, it means you got hours. Y'all have hours. Oh, Godspeed. Yeah. Godspeed for sure. You're
got one more day, depending on where you are.
Oh no, Natalie just said it is June 30th for me now. Oh no, you're in my time zone. Deadline day. Oh no. Jay Lisa, hi. I use examples like Edward Cullen and Christian Grey and other love interests to craft my villain.
Okay.
I mean, I suppose they could be villain characters. They're very cardboard a bit. You need to flesh them out. Those characters are not the best written, but they do have aspects of them that a lot of people like, but when you think about it logically, are villainous. Both are insanely controlling people, insanely manipulating people. They are both abusers. So, and sexist in the extreme. So, I can see them being villains. Definitely make sure you flesh them out so they're not too cartoony.
Yeah. Honestly, I never thought of either of them as villain characters. Though I guess it's been a really long time since especially for Edward. I was like, I haven't read that. Twilight, I haven't done Twilight in forever.
Last time I watched Twilight, it was with Rift Track backing. I don't know if you guys know Rift Tracks. Same people who did Mystery Science Theater 3000, those comedians. Okay. They now have a website called rifttracks.com with an X, Rift Tracks. and they do commentary on modern movies, and you download
Oh,
the
that's
commentary and you
fun.
just play it alongside the movie. They've got so many movies. They're hilarious, and they
That's
did a
really
couple, not
funny. I
all of them, but
love
they did a
that.
couple of the Twilight movies.
I could
They're
see
pretty
that.
funny. I think the funniest one is New Moon. That
Mm.
commentary is gut busting. It's really, really funny.
Oh my
10
gosh.
out of
Yeah,
10 recommend
I
that. If
look
you're gonna
back at
do a
Twilight.
rewatch,
It's like
do it.
it's one of those things that I was obsessed with when I was like a sixth grader, and then looking back, I'm like, I don't know. I haven't read it since I was a sixth grader, so I can't really say. I guess that's why I just
Their behavior in
never
the books, not the
associated.
movies. Gray's behavior in the book is worse. I've never read 50 Shades, but I could believe that because I've heard some people read excerpts that are
Mm-hmm.
horrific. And it's not just like a lot of people read excerpts about how like cringy some of the dialogue and other some
Yeah.
of the thought pieces of the characters from the books are actually scary. Like, and I did follow someone who actually did go through the book as someone who has been in an abusive relationship before, and they started listing all the red flags and how they
Mm-hmm.
were put off as romance, but it was like
Right.
hardcore red flag for mental,
Oh,
emotional, and physical abusers. And it's scary how much of it's in the book. So I have no doubt this is true. I do think that the book has a lot of really bad stuff in it.
yeah. I did read the book. It was god awful. The prose and everything, but like I don't know. I think it's interesting too, like the line between like the whole like BDM stuff and then like the actual like relationship stuff, because I think like there is a line there, and I think it doesn't tread on that like enough because he's like way too controlling in the relationship aspect of it. I don't know. I was like, this doesn't, because I don't kink shame, but also,
Yeah. But
but
also,
also,
Brandon, I've watched a hilarious Twilight reaction on YouTube with Cindy. Yes, with Cindy. I don't know if you guys
mm,
know with Cindy. With Cindy does do book reviews and stuff like that. With Cindy has been in and out of like BookTube for years. Um, I will say a lot of her videos are very inappropriate. Like, don't play them around
mm.
kids and stuff like that. But they are hilarious. I love With Cindy's stuff, so I do highly
I'll have to
recommend
look
With
her up.
Cindy's
I
stuff
don't
if
think
you're looking
I,
for a ton of sass. She read a lot of those books that are pretty much fairy corn, but it's not corn
mhm.
essentially. But they're like there's these very popular book series, Corn of Thorns or Roses or something like that. I don't know.
Oh
I
yeah,
don't
the
know what the
Court of
popular
Thorns
things
and
are these
Roses.
days, but like it's one of those
Oh yeah,
romance.
the
Yeah,
Sarah J. Maas.
it's pretty much soft corn, if you get my drift. Like it's really
Yep.
inappropriate stuff, and she'll read just some of it out loud so you can hear just how bad it is. It's like cringe
Mhm.
to the extreme, and she's so funny because some of her comments, she's so blunt. It's not appropriate, but it's very funny. So
Yeah,
if you like that
I'll
kind of stuff,
definitely.
I do think you will enjoy her
Yeah,
content.
I'll definitely have to look her up because I've heard so many things about, especially with the Sarah J. Maas and the Court of Thorn and
Oh yeah,
Roses, and like
that's
how
the
much
author,
people
Sarah J
like,
Maas.
yeah, how much like people like really love her. And I haven't read any of them or whatever, but it's been on my TBR for a while because I've heard good things about the books. But if she's like reacting badly, I'm like, ooh,
I
there's some tea here. I want to know my take on it. I need to listen to this.
I that's a series that I would hate read.
Yeah. I mean,
But at the
that's
same
why I
time, I
grade
don't want to give her
53.
money. At the same time, I don't want to give her money because, like, again,
Mm.
it's like a lot of these
Well,
tropes are really, really abusive tropes that are in these books. They're like
yeah.
severe.
Well,
So
isn't that series like semi YA too? Isn't it marketed as YA?
it's supposed to be one of those ones that's between the YA. It's supposed to be one of those ones that would be considered new adult, but because a lot of
Gotcha.
places don't actually use that term, it's being put off as it shouldn't be.
Mm.
It's like it's right there that it should be pretty much adult at that point. Like it's really, really bad. I'm actually, if it is YA, which it shouldn't be, it should be adult. But I think some people push it as if it's YA, but I don't think it technically, because it's got
Yeah.
straight up intercourse scenes, like multiple per book. So I don't know how you could get away with that with YA, personally, because
Yeah.
YA covers a large range of ages. YA covers everything from 14-year-olds all the way through to young 20s. So I don't think it is, but I'm not positive.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole reason why they were pushing the new adult stuff too, is to like separate that kind of thing out. But yeah, no, I agree. I think YA has such a wide range that people should be more careful about that kind of stuff because
Yep.
I mean, at least like as people who work in school settings, like kids are at such like a different range in terms of what they know about sex and what they experienced and everything like that. And the last thing you want is them to like pick up a book at the school library and then be triggered by something in the book because they didn't expect it to be there as a YA book or because it was in the school or vice versa. So I don't know.
So for me, Bite Model from Stephen Hassan. Do you know Bite Model? I've never heard this one.
I do not actually. I've never heard it either.
Bite Model. I have to look that up. That's interesting. Villain is based on a few of the most dangerous cult leaders. Cult leaders are a special brand of evil, man.
They
I have
are. They
friends
really,
that have had
really
dealings
are.
with that. It's scary. Some scary stuff, man. Yeah. I love Read with Cindy. Yeah, she's good. Yeah, I was wondering why with Cindy sound familiar. Perhaps she did a collab with a YouTuber I watch. Going to check her actual content. Yes. It was a YA. It was YA, but they changed to adult. Oh, we were both right then.
Oh,
We
they
were both
did?
right at the same time. I was just thinking there's no way it can be YA, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I was like, I remembering it when people were talking about it to me and how much they really liked it. It was when I was a bit younger and they were saying it was YA, but it was a little bit more steamy, so they liked it better than other YAs. Oh, man.
Bite Model deals with the way cults act. I think President 45 as an example. Yep. Yeah. Okay, so Bite Model, that's why I haven't seen it with writing, because it has to do with cults. That makes sense. I might have seen that because like I have religious trauma from being raised conservative Christian, and some of the churches I went to could qualify as cult, actually. A lot of my friends were involved in religious cults as well. And thankfully they're out. Everyone's okay. But like it gets scary very fast. So all I'm going to say on that one. Nathan, I laughed so hard. Any reviewer says, I want more story and less of the between the sheets fantasy stories. Wish they had read my stories. The story is less of the between the sheets generally. Yeah. Yeah. But there's a saying that sex sells, unfortunately. And to an extent it does, the sensationalism of it, because that's one of those things why there's a part of me that wants to hate read, but there's a huge part of me that does not want to give money either. Because that's kind of how they become so popular. Is it starts with one of two people, either people who really like that stuff or people who read it to hate read. And then it just explodes in numbers and it hits the masses. So I kind of don't like to be a part of that. So.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the only reason I got the 50 Shades book was because I was at a thrift store and it was like 50 cents.
50 cents for 50 Shades.
Right? Exactly. It worked out.
When judging YA content, I just pretend I'm advertising in a high school library. Parents and teachers listening. Do I feel like a perv? It ain't YA. That's a good one. Yep.
Yeah.
Try explaining it to a grandma. If you feel uncomfortable, you probably shouldn't. You know? Just simply because, like, this should be something that if a 13-year-old has it in their backpack, it shouldn't be something their parents, like, if their parents question it, it should be something like, wow, this is a really serious topic. Are you sure you want to, like, read it? Because, like, that's okay. It's okay to have topics that are serious, but it needs to be done in such a way that, like, the parents could have a discussion with the kid and be like, I can understand why you would want to read this, you know, because it's handled in an appropriate way for that age group. It's one of the many reasons I don't write YA. I mean, technically, I think my story currently qualifies as YA, but I'm not writing it that way because I don't think I can. But we'll see. I'm kind of leaving that for the aftermath of
Yeah,
everything.
no, I get that. I felt that with Dance of Shadows too, because, well, that one's hard because it also like kind of bleeds the line because I have a couple like teen characters, and then I have a couple like adult characters, and I don't have any like sex or anything else like really explicit going on. I got violence and shit, and I have a lot of swearing, so
Yeah,
it's like,
it might switch over just for that. You never know. Hard to
yeah,
say.
exactly. So that's
They
kind of
changed
how
the
I'm
covers and
thinking.
started changing the recent book with the older sister. Yeah, I hope no minors are involved in certain things in those books. That's creepy. Oh, blessed be. Yeah. And on that note, we should probably be ending because I've got to go. I've got meetings and stuff, unfortunately. I would love to stay. We've got good discussion going. But alas. But yeah, thank you guys so much for coming. That was really, really fun. The next video will be on Haley's channel. So next week, next Wednesday on Haley's channel, we will have another Wednesday writing. So thank you guys so much for coming. I hope you guys got a lot out of it. I certainly did. Oh, one last thing. There's a reason I call my book YA. The only thing mature about it is it might be the violence, but they'll see all younger and younger literature. Yes, absolutely. I guess I have a love interest, but as they're all dragons, they don't really kiss. Okay. Bye, guys. Thank you guys so much for everything. It's been a great stream, and we'll see you next week over on Haley Writes channel. Links are down below. Remember to like and subscribe if you want to see more content in your feeds. Thank you guys so much. See you.
Bye.